there are so many things that you can hit as pitfalls in real estate that can really just tank you very quickly. And I lost so much money in 2 years on real estate, and only because of my ability to think through each new problem uh, have I been able to float myself along. Uh, and we're gonna make it. Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, Shaun Morgan, a full-time teacher. That's right, I teach every day just like you, and personal financial coach. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you're a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck, to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life. The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. So now it's time to have our long-promised The Downs of Real Estate episode, where I'm going to tell you all about the negative aspect of real estate, the bad experience that I've had. I had my last episode where I was just talking, me and you, to tell you about the good parts of real estate and why I'm still optimistic about real estate. And now you're going to hear why it is so incredible that I'm so optimistic about real estate, because of how bad it's gone for me in the past couple of years. And I'm going to use my pretty rough experience with real estate these past couple of years to teach you some principles, some things to look out for when you are getting into real estate investing, if you choose to get into real estate investing. Once again, I feel like when I was getting started, the push was everyone needs to be in real estate. It's the thing that's going to build wealth better than anything else out there. And I still agree that it is one of the strongest wealth builders in the world. However, that doesn't mean that you need to do it. So if you do not feel that itch, that compelling, push inside of you to invest in real estate, then just don't do it. But here is the downs of real estate investing. So just to bring you back up to speed, things were going pretty good. I had built a tiny house on my property, and I was renting that out on Airbnb. I then got a rental property that was, a nice base hit. I was saved by appreciation a little bit on my ability to refinance it, and I was able to pay off a small amount of debt that came with that, but that was fine. And then I had those two properties, and I decided to buy a triplex, which I will talk about in this episode more in depth. And just one more bit of information you need to know is I also moved in town. So I was living outside of town, pretty far away from all of my rental properties. I moved into town, and now I'm closer to my rental properties, and I turned that outside of town house into a rental. So I had a long-term rental there in the main house and in the tiny house, because I didn't want to keep driving out there to flip the Airbnb. And then I had the other rental, and then I had my triplex. So that's the situation I'm in as things start to turn for the worse. But let's take a step back. So the way I got into this triplex actually involves what's called a wholesale deal. I don't enjoy wholesaling. It's actually one of my least favorite things in real estate for me to do, because it just involves like blasting people, trying to get someone to sell you a house for way less than it could probably be sold to somebody else. In general, the wholesalers do a very important service, and I'm grateful for wholesalers because I'm able to use them to find properties for me to buy. But I just didn't like doing it. Knocking on doors, sending out mailers, sending out flyers, getting lists and driving around looking for houses that you might want to, try and buy. It just was a lot of upfront legwork that I didn't have time for, and I just didn't really want to do it. It didn't, light me up. But I stumbled into a wholesale deal, in which case I was just talking to a friend who said, my friend needs to sell their house. They are in foreclosure right now. They're about to lose it, and it's just an absolute wreck. No one's going to buy it. So what do we do? And I said, well, I can help, right? We can sell it for basically what it's owed on it. But they won't get foreclosed on. So I was able to go in there, they owed 60K on it. I was able to turn around and try and sell for 65 to get a spread on the wholesale. I wasn't selling it. I was selling the note. It's the way that they work. The wholesale is like a contract. So I didn't ever take possession of the property. And I found somebody who was interested, and they signed a contract with me, and they say, yeah, we're going to buy it. We're going to buy it. We're going to buy it. And then the buying date passes, and like, oh, well, we had this one problem, but we're still going to buy it. The buying date passes. So we're moving along, and I just wasn't able, it was a struggle for me to find this person to begin with. So I had, little experience in wholesaling. So I was like, well, they keep saying they're going to buy it. They've got this issue fixed. They've got that issue fixed. So we should be good to go. Well, we're getting pushed closer and closer to this house being foreclosed on. And I eventually am saying, look, I've got to get this closed, or you've got to go away. And they were able to pull it together miraculously at the last second, and they bought the house. And that was just extremely stressful for a couple of months there. And then I go to the closing table and I get told, well, your sellers owe $3,500 on this property, and that has to be paid to sell it. So instead of making $5,000, I walk away with $1,500 because I end up paying those closing costs to sell the property off. And I was like, well, I didn't like wholesaling that much to begin with, so I'm just not going to really do that again. But I had this money and I was trying to get this money to buy another property. I had someone who's willing to sell me a triplex for a very, what I thought was a very reasonable amount considering how much the triplex could bring in. And they were going to offer me a huge credit so that way I wouldn't have to bring money to the table for the most part. And I said, well, I can't buy it now that I have 1,500 instead of 5,000. Well, they offered an even larger credit. That should have been a red flag to me that they didn't want the property so bad that they were offering huge credits to me to just get the property away from them. But I was able to buy it using that money from the wholesale. And this triplex, I call the crap house, because it's just been terrible the entire time I've owned it. And it was super sketchy, right? I didn't really know what I was getting into because I didn't live in town. I hadn't really bought in low class areas. And I was like, well, it's a triplex. There's people living in it right now. It should be fine. Uh, it wasn't fine. So I think my first thing, just to keep in mind is you don't want to buy somewhere that you're uncomfortable with, that you can't handle that environment necessarily. And I'm really not comfortable with this area. It's one of the highest crime areas in town. I didn't know that. I didn't take the time to look that up because I wasn't thinking and I was inexperienced at the time. And This is a fun side story. About a year after I bought this property, I ran into somebody and I met somebody for the first time, and they were asking me about what I did, and I was talking to them, and they were a real estate investor, and I was like, oh yeah, well I just have this property. And he used to be a cop, but he had just retired from being a cop to be a real estate investor full time. And I told him the address. He said, oh, that house. So it was known to cops. Pretty rough place. Now, I have made the house much better than it was. They have not had problems with cops in a long time. I'm very proud of that fact. But it's just one of those things that I should have thought about it. I should have done something more in my due diligence up front. But anyway, without that problem, I still had the problem of being in a sketchy area. The tenants were not always paying. I've had one tenant that's been there the whole time. She has paid consistently, and I'm super grateful for her. But I had another tenant who left shortly after I took over, so I had an empty spot, and I had a third tenant who was about to be evicted when I bought it. And it turns out you can't evict somebody after buying it without starting the eviction over. So I decided to try and work with her, and she started paying me a little bit, but she's really difficult to work with and difficult to get payment from. So I had an empty unit, a unit that wasn't paying full amount, and then that one stabilized unit. And that was a big struggle. I brought somebody else into the empty unit, and they didn't pay me hardly anything. And I had to, just get doggedly on them, try and get any kind of payment. And eventually I had to evict them. Now, evictions are not fun. Even in a place where, like Texas, where I live, it's relatively easy to evict. You file paper, well, you give them notice, you file paperwork, they show up or they don't show up to the hearing. For the most part, if they haven't been paying, they get told sorry, and then they have some time to get out, and then you clear out their stuff and they've been evicted. Pretty straightforward process, but it costs money not only to file the paperwork, but also to hire people to come help you to empty the property because they usually will just leave all their junk in there because they're like, well, if I'm getting evicted, I'm not going to do any of the work pulling all this stuff out of the house because I have to pull it out and leave it out for them to take. So it's a pretty spiteful game at that point. And the first property that I evicted somebody from was actually the one in the back. So the ones that weren't paying in the front unit, I wasn't evicting them quite yet because they were at least, seemed to be trying to pay me. The one in the back was definitely engaging in some sort of illegal activity. You know, drugs and things like that were going into there. So I ended up evicting her first. And when we go in there to evict her, it's about 300 square foot house, and it was floor to ceiling packed with stuff that we had to pull out, including a closet that was full of definitely stolen goods. So that was a justification of why I evicted her. But that was like, wow, this stuff's all stolen. And then I had to deal with other issues, including being threatened by her sister initially after she moved out. So that was a whole ordeal. That was a major issue. Well, the tenant in the front stopped paying, like I said, and I had to evict him as well. And evicting him was also not fun because his house was full of junk, including used needles, which, once again, that's the area I bought in. It was lots of problems. I had not vetted him for drugs, apparently, and I'm not sure how. It should have come up on a criminal report if he had been caught with it, so maybe he wasn't. But it was pretty hardcore usage, which would explain why he wasn't paying because he was using all of his money to buy drugs. So I got him out, had to clean it up. So my number one takeaway is just buy in higher quality areas. If you are going to buy into real estate, buy in a high quality area. You don't want that headache. If you are not a full-time investor who has all the time in the world to deal with these issues, just don't. If the area is not at least, they do A, B, C. A is like luxury, B is, middle class, and C is the lower. Mine was probably D class. It's a very, very low area. But if it's not, B class minimum, I wouldn't invest in those areas just because it's not going to be um, good for you as a most likely part-time real estate investor. You don't want something that's going to cause headaches. I've been to this triplex more times to handle an issue, to collect payment, to serve notice for eviction or anything else, more than I've been to any of my other properties combined. So just keep that in mind that the higher the quality area, the less headaches you're going to have. That's my first takeaway from this property. I also ended up having to fix up the property. So the back unit and the front unit that's not occupied. So I have that one occupied unit. That one's pretty good. I had to fix up both of those. And that cost me nearly 15 grand to do those things. And then I thought, well, if I fix them up, it'll bring up the value, right? So I originally bought it and it was appraised for 178. And I was like, wow, I'm walking in with equity. This is great. But it turns out that was a bogus appraisal. It was based on an assumption that the rents were going to raise for much more than I wasn't even planning on raising them as much as they were claiming they were going up. And they weren't able to raise that much. So it's just anyway, the point is that the appraisal was wrong. And I tried to sell it within a few months because I thought I was over my head, and I was getting offers of like 135K. And I didn't want to lose that much money on the property. I wish I had just sold it at this point because I probably would have been able to be a much happier person and would have lost maybe less money with all the fixing up that I've done. So Anyway, I was just getting those offers like, man, this appraisal was incorrect. I misunderstood apparently how the appraisal works. So this is all part of like making sure you understand everything. I was inexperienced when I bought this. I just assumed that what I was being told up front and not, the fine print was the correct thing. So that's another key that we're going to look at here in a second. But point is that I bought it uh, thinking it was priced for much. I fix it up and it's still not worth anywhere near that 178 that I expected it to be worth when I bought it. So uh, pretty rough lesson there. Well, as I said, with that drop in perceived value, at least what I thought it was worth versus what it's actually worth, I decided to sell it. I needed to have some cash on hand so that way I could cut a check at the table to make up the difference. So I decided to try to flip a house to get that cash. One of my worst decisions of all time was saying, hey, I'm getting strapped for cash on this property, so I'm going to do another deal. You do not want to try and save yourself with another deal if you are not as experienced as you would like to be, right? It's just, if you're a very seasoned real estate investor, that's totally possible. But since I had not done enough real estate and understood enough about it, this was a very poor choice, especially because I didn't have enough cash on hand to handle any problems that would come up. I had my cash tied up in this other problem. So I decided to go with this slip though, because I was inexperienced. And once again, I think this is a no-brainer. It's worth 180K. I agree, my realtor agrees, my lender agrees, it's worth 180K. Turns out we were all wrong. Due to the type of house it was, which none of us realized this, it was only worth 160K due to the roof inclination. And that was on a good day. But we didn't know that. So they let us get started and we immediately hit unforeseen problems. Electrical rewiring needed throughout the house, termite damage, some plumbing issues. There's just been problem after problem after problem that we did not catch when we were first checking the house out. Now, this is on me. I should have had a full inspection done. I had a very light inspection done on the property, thinking that I knew what to look for with a contractor, and we were both looking for things, but apparently we missed a lot. Termite damage, you can't do anything about that. It's in the walls, so we would have had to deal with that anyway. I could have caught the electrical thing a little bit sooner, but still, even if I caught the electrical wiring, it would not have saved this flip. I bought the house for 90K and I expected to put in 40. Turns out it would cost me $120,000. Now, this was a little bit of underestimating on my part, but it was also inexperience on knowing how much things cost and being told it costs this much versus that much from different people. I mean, I paid $10,000 to rewire the house, and I was told later that other people would do it for much less. So just making sure that you know what things cost, asking multiple opinions, asking for help from more seasoned people. That's huge. And then the other thing that caused that is I had a contractor who was doing okay until we got into this more extensive work, and he wasn't able to do it. So I had to switch contractors, and that new contractor was much more expensive. So not only did it cost more money, but because it was costing more money, I found myself wanting to do more and be more involved in the project to try and save money. So I redid the fence myself. There was also a gigantic hole in the ground that we discovered after we moved a bunch of mattresses off of it because the house was kind of gross. And that gigantic hole in the ground was probably used as a greenhouse to grow weed at some point. So it's just like pretty sketchy stuff here. But I had to get a bunch of free dirt from somewhere and haul it there and fill in this. It took probably a dozen trips to fill this hole in. So there's just been a whole bunch of little things like that that have just been very time consuming. And in general, the project was very money consuming. So, at the end of this, my emergency fund is completely gone. I had to sell my first rental property to try and cover some of the costs. It didn't sell for as much as I wanted it to, though, so that didn't help very much. I had to refinance my old primary residence to help pay off the debt. And I'm still stuck with the property because I wasn't ever able to sell it because it's not worth what it was supposed to be worth, right? Uh, so right now I have it rented out, but I can't get it priced high enough to refinance it. So I'm holding a very high interest loan right now, waiting for the market to shift. It is not fun. So not only did I not sell the crap house because I wasn't able to get the cash to be able to sell it and take a loss. I now have another headache problem on top of that. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm still optimistic that real estate is a powerful engine for creating wealth. I'm at the bottom of a trough, though. Hopefully, you will never have to get to the bottom of a trough. Hopefully, hearing this, you won't just hear all the sunshines and rainbows about real estate and think, oh, I can do that too. Let's get in. There are so many things that you can hit as pitfalls in real estate that can really just tank you very quickly. And I lost so much money in 2 years on real estate. And only because of my ability to think through each new problem, uh, have I been able to float myself along. And we're going to make it. It's just not been a fun probably 3 years at this point experience by the time I finish this whole project, uh, you know, to recover from. And you got to be prepared for that potentially happening. There is risk in any investment. And I'd say there's much more risk in real estate just because of the ability for it to take cash out of your hands. Like if you lose value on your stock portfolio, you haven't lost actual cash yet. They're not going to come and say, you know what, because your stock portfolio went down, I'm going to need to have, $10,000 from you. That's not going to happen. But if your roof goes out, if your HVAC goes out, if any of these things happen, they can say, you know what, we need that cash from you right now because you can't just let the roof leak on your tenants. You can't just let them not have air conditioning. You have to take care of those problems as they come up, and it's expensive. So be prepared for that. And I was delaying this episode because I was hoping to have the final numbers for you for what it cost me total to make these mistakes. And it was supposed to end last month. And then I found out about these refinances not working. And I'm still stuck. I'm still, losing a little bit of money every single month, waiting for the problems to be able to be fixed as the market turns. And it's rough. It's hard. So just be aware that it could be really hard if you decide to get into real estate. Once again, I don't want you to think, man, I guess Shaun's saying, don't do it. Not what I'm saying. But make sure you want to and make sure you're prepared. Now it's time for the Cliff Notes. The Cliff Notes are brought to you by me. I have just started a new project. I am going to schools to speak to teachers like you about finance. It is a professional development opportunity for me to come and speak at your school, at your district. Think of it as like those people who come and give you the rah-rah speech when you're at your beginning of the year gathering for your district or whatever. I'm kind of like that. Or those people that come into school to teach you about the latest in learning outcomes or whatever it is you're doing. Like that. I can come to your school, or I can come virtually to your school to talk to you about your finances, to help put your teachers in your school, not just you, but all the teachers in your school on the right track, to help build financial confidence so you can thrive in education. That is my goal. So if you are interested in having me come to your school, if you would like to bring me in, please talk to your principal, talk to your superintendent, and tell them to go to Shaun, SHAUN, Morgan, MORGAN.com, and they can find all the information about the talks I give, how to contact me from there. Okay, now on to the Cliff Notes. So my first Cliff Note is you must have a substantial amount of cash on hand to weather the storm. If you do not have multiple months worth of an emergency fund, do not invest in real estate. No matter how much you have the itch to get in, do not do it. There are some instances where I can think of that might be a good idea, such as getting into a house hack where you're buying your personal residence and then offsetting that amount. That's, I think, okay. But if you're buying another rental property outside of where you live, definitely have multiple months of cash on hand as an emergency fund. Number two, you have to have thick skin. Kicking people out is kind of hard for me, actually. So I'm wondering if real estate is even the best with tenants, because it's really difficult to kick somebody out. And you can't let their excuses, oh, the payment's coming. Oh, I just have this, I just have that. Sometimes you just gotta evict somebody. And I'm still dealing with that with one of my tenants actually right now, and I probably need to get more thick skin and kick them out. But uh, it's hard for me. So if you don't have that thick skin, if you don't think you can confront somebody to kick them out, uh, then might not be the best thing for you. But of course, once again, if you look at uh, the first thing I said, which is buy in nicer areas, you're much less likely to have evictions in a nicer area. I have evicted nobody from any of my other properties. I've only evicted somebody from this one. Now, I have had people leave in the middle of their contract. That's annoying, but it only cost me the amount of money to get it turned over and get it rented again versus having to evict somebody, pull them out, pay for people to pull it out, and then do the same thing. So just keep in mind that you have less headaches in different places, but you have to be willing to kick people out. And I'm working on that right now myself. So I'm saying it to you, but I'm also saying it to myself. Number three, evictions are costly and can be gross, like really disgusting stuff you're pulling out. Yeah, I felt dirty and took a shower after I did my evictions. They're just not fun. So be aware that if you are going to have to get into real estate, you might have to evict somebody. You need to be ready to do that, to pay for it, and to know that it's going to be a less than fun experience. Number four, it's a people business more than a house business. I didn't really say this explicitly during the episode, but I want you to realize that you can't just mathematically run a real estate business. And it feels like, oh, it's just about the house and making the house nice and doing this and having this contract or that, whatever. You're dealing with people. People have real problems, real issues, real emotions, real life. And you have to be willing to confront that and to build that relationship with your tenants. If you have a strong relationship with your tenant, instead of just, saying, give me money, you'll be much more able to just have a back and forth, right? Okay, you want this thing done? Well, I'm waiting for this payment from you. Or, oh, you need an extra couple of days because of the way your payment's coming? That's okay. I trust you because you've been talking to me, right? There's that back and forth with that relationship with your tenants. That's I think is really key. What's made my crap house bearable is that I've got tenants in there right now that I have a relationship with that are able to communicate with me. And that I think is what makes all the difference. Number five, do your due diligence, then do it again. I got hosed twice by incorrect valuations from experts that I trusted. I just assumed that the numbers that I was given were correct, and it just was not the case. Now, I don't know if there's a way that I could necessarily have fixed that problem when I was going into these properties, other than just asking more experts. Say, does anyone else have an opinion on this until I've become an expert? Because I'm stuck with two properties that I was told was worth $50,000 or $30,000 more than they're actually worth today. So it is a huge deal to make sure you have those numbers locked in. Also, when it comes to the cost to fix something, make sure you have those numbers locked in. Number six, you can lose actual cash much faster in real estate than in stocks, because once again, stocks will not just take cash from your pocket, but real estate can. So make sure you have I said it enough, an emergency fund on hand. It is huge. Number seven, I'm not saying don't do it, but don't do it poorly or haphazardly. Be cautious and you'll do fine. Learn, get a mentor, get help, have an emergency fund. These things are key. You can do real estate investing if you want to, and it can be great. Remember that last episode I gave about how wonderful real estate can be. If I had kept doing what I was doing in my previous real estate ventures and not tried to do these other things that were in areas I didn't understand, using valuations I didn't quite understand, I would have been doing much better. So just make sure you are educated, you have help, you have the cash, and do it cautiously and slowly, and you will be fine if real estate is what you want to do. And it is the most powerful wealth generating engine in the world. if you're willing to do it and do it right. Okay, that's the show for today. Those are the cliff notes. Remember though, regardless of how you decide to build your wealth, as a teacher, you are already rich. Your wallet just needs to catch up. Are you worried you won't have enough money to retire? Or maybe you just don't know how you're going to get out of all of this debt. Whatever your situation is, I can help you. Go to teachermoneyshow.com/guest and fill out the form there, and you can come on the show for free coaching, or we can meet one-on-one to discuss your needs. I look forward to talking to you.